just... Hi, thanks first of all. Sorry, I'm Jon Pike. I'm a philosopher of sport, and you may know me as Run Think Right on Twitter.
John, can I get you to move the microphone closer to you? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, try that. Is that better? Okay, so what I'm going to talk about today is the IOC's theory of fairness in sport as it's encapsulated in the framework document, the 2022 framework document. I suppose this is a Know Your Enemy presentation. They have an understanding of fairness in sport, and I think it's wrong, and I want to explain to you why I think it's wrong. It's called, or I have called it, the meaningful competition theory, and published a paper on it earlier this year, which is open access. Anyone can read it online. So although I've got quite a few slides with quite a lot of words on in that terrible academic way, don't worry too much. You can go straight to the paper and have a look at it if you wish. So it's a critique of the framework document on fairness, inclusion and non-discrimination. And if the IOC get to look at this, I think you should withdraw that paper because it doesn't make sense. Okay, so the account built into the IOC's position comes from Joanna Harper and Yanis Pitsouladis, and it's most fully worked out in a paper called Implications of a Third Gender in Elite Sport, where they were trying to argue for something like a category of athletic woman. You don't need to worry too much about the third gender stuff. This is what they say. And I can't. The intention for separating athletes into male and female categories is to provide women athletes with meaningful competition. It would therefore be equally reasonable, equally to what, I don't know, equally reasonable to allow transgender or intersex women to compete with other female athletes, if and only if the inclusion of these athletes did not unduly alter the playing field for other women. If one can minimize the athletic advantages potentially held by gender variant athletes, then one can satisfy this requirement. It may not be necessary or even possible to eliminate all individual advantages held by a transgender or intersex woman. So that's the position. It makes no sense, and I want to explain why it makes no sense. But look at a few features of it. First of all, we've got a name, meaningful competition. We've got the term intersex being used, which is a term I think we should avoid. We've got a comparison between trans women or gender variant women and other women or other female athletes. That is, there's an implicit claim there that trans women are female, right? Now, if you take that, I mean, one of the reasons this document is so terrible is it doesn't follow through the logic of its own argument. Let's suppose something that's completely false. Let's suppose that trans women are female. Now, I am in favour of anyone who is female being eligible for female sport. If trans women are female, which is the claim here, then trans women ought to be automatically eligible for female sport. But this is a paper arguing for testosterone level restrictions, which means they know that they're adding an additional barrier. If they had the courage of their convictions, and to be fair, Rachel McKinnon sometimes argues this line, if trans women are women, if trans women are female, then they should be straightforwardly eligible for female sport. You don't need this additional step of testosterone level reduction. So they lack the courage of their convictions here. It's a problematic theory. How much you can minimize athletic advantages is an empirical matter. It depends on certain sorts of treatment. Fairness in sport for women, I argue, depends on eliminating male advantages, not minimizing male advantages. And of course, they say it may not be necessary or even possible to eliminate all individual advantages held by a transgender or intersex woman. Any remaining advantages ought to be considered as one component of their unique makeup. Now, contrast this with the standard understanding of fairness in sport. And that's that fair equality of opportunity requires a female category. The word fair is important here because equality of opportunity might be provided in some sense by mixed competition. We might say, for example, if everyone competes in 100 meters, all you have to do, males and females, all you have to do is run 9.6 seconds and you'll win. Any woman who runs 9.6 seconds will win. Okay? There's an equal opportunity. Anyone, regardless of sex, who runs 9.6 seconds can win. So equality of opportunity is not quite enough. What we're after is what we in the trade call FEOPS, F-E-O-P-S, fair equality of opportunity. Fair equality of opportunity means that the opportunities of sporting success are available equally to men and women, to males and females. So in this world, maybe in a different world where we had different bodies or there were three sexes or whatever, we'd organize sport differently. But in this world with the bodies that we have, we need separate female competition. Okay, and we don't present this as a kind of abstract capital F fairness account that we've just sucked out of the air. This is an account that comes from the institutions that we already have in the world, international federations, national governing bodies that all organize sport on a sex basis, that have female and male competition. And that realizes our idea of fairness. So our idea of fairness is exemplified, is made real in the fact that we already have male and female competition. What happens in this debate is people lose sight of the fact that we already have male and female competition, and that male and female competition is justified by our idea of fairness. So we've got an idea, let's run with it and let's see what the implications are. Okay, in order to, here's a bit of philosophy of sport for a Saturday morning. Is it Saturday morning? Whatever day it is. Here's a little bit of philosophy of sport for you. Okay, so consider two types of advantage: category advantages and competitive advantages. Now, category advantages are advantages that set up competition, and competitive advantages are the advantages that are realized in competition, that are kind of battled out on the field of play. If we are sufficiently precise, the same advantage cannot be both a category and a competitive advantage. We control for certain advantages, and we allow other advantages to play themselves out. So competitive advantages are advantages like height advantage in basketball, or the advantage of being born with a very high VO2 max in endurance sport, or a wide variety of genetic advantages, such as those held by Michael Phelps. This is the famous Phelps gambit, and this, my presentation should enable you to see precisely what's wrong with the Phelps gambit. Category advantages, on the other hand, are advantages that define what a sport is. So they define the nature of the sport. So why are e-bikes banned in the Tour de France? Well, because it's a bike race, and it's about how fast you can pedal, not, how big your electric motor is. They define the nature of sport as a whole in that, standardly, and there's arguments about this, but standardly we think that it's a battle of not pharmacists, but athletes. So we don't think that it's appropriate to have performance-enhancing drugs fueling the competition. And they make real and express our understanding of fairness, as I've said. So these control for major, but not all, major inequalities that are athlete-independent. So I did nothing to earn my male physiological advantage, such as it is. Therefore, I should not be rewarded for my male physiological advantage, such as it is. But this is slightly a grey area, because there are genetic advantages that we don't earn, that we do get rewarded for in sport. We just work out and play out an understanding of fairness here. Right, that's the background. I'm a philosopher and not a sports scientist, but I read the sports science and I work with people like Ross and Emma to understand the sports science here. And here is the kind of data that gets us, that tells us where we are. The papers in 2020 that tell us that we have, after gender-affirming therapy, there is residual male advantage. So there's remaining male advantage for trans women. And we know that this is true of all those factors that are affected by reducing circulating testosterone, but we also know that there's residual male advantage in skeletal changes and long levers and so on and so on. So what I'm going to do now is put together the science and the conceptual stuff about category and competition advantages. Here's the standard picture that we control for in some sports. Well, we control for age advantage in just about every sport because we have junior and master competitions. We control for weight advantage in some sports, rowing, boxing, and so on. And we control for male sex advantage in just about every sport, every athletic sport. And we let other things work themselves out. So we have this division, these two columns. You're going to get bored with these two columns because I'm going to bang on and on and on about them. These two columns of competitive and category advantage. And we can play about with this. And when we play about with this, we can see what our theory of sport is, our theory of fairness of sport is. So here is a proposal that we turn everything into competitive advantage, and we just have a one category sporting system. And what's the problem with this? It's that blokes in their late 20s who are generally fairly tall will win everything. Certainly fairly strong, and it'll vary from sport to sport, but it will be blokes in their late 20s, winning pretty much everything. So we think that's probably a bad idea because no one else gets a look in. So we have categories. We have categories to close up these inequalities that we're not responsible for and we shouldn't be rewarded for because, funnily enough, blokes in their late 20s are not the most important people in the world and not the most deserving of applause, right? But we do need some competitive advantages. We do need this distinction is not plucked out of the air. We do need both distinctions because look what happens if we say, let's equalize for all advantages. Right, that's back to the standard position. No, I've gone the wrong way. Sorry. Competitive advantages. Let's make everything a category advantage. All the advantages that I have as Jon Pike are different, and all the disadvantages I have as Jon Pike are different to all the advantages that you have as each of you. So I need to be in my own category. There are 8 billion of us, and so we need 8 billion categories. Now, at some point, some smart aleck is going to come up with identical twins here, and I'm going to put that off as a footnote. But you can see the idea here, right? We could say we'll control for everything, in which case we have 8 billion categories. So we need to have some sort of mix of competition advantage and category advantage. Here is a standard one. A mate of mine says he's a philosopher, so you can't trust anything he says. He says he wants to be a basketball player. The trouble is he's 5'3". So he proposes, and this actually won't solve his problem. He says, why not have a basketball category for people shorter than 5'9"? And you could mess around and have that. You could have that sort of competition. I don't have hugely strong views either way, but we can shift these advantages from one side to the other. Here, back to the beginning, and here is the proposal to eliminate women's sport, right? Which is the straightforward proposal, which isn't in the IOC document. The straightforward proposal to eliminate women's sport and have everyone competing regardless of sex, which is argued by a couple of wacky philosophers of sport, right? But again, back to the beginning. So let's look at combining these two things that we know about, residual male advantage and this categorization theory. Well, residual male advantage is a form of male advantage. The clue is in the name. So we can stick residual male advantage under male advantage. So here's the standard picture. Right now, this allows us to see the crucial mistake that the IOC have made. And it goes like that, right? Which is to say that we keep the female category, but we allow residual male advantage in the female category, although we have established male advantage as a categorical advantage and not a competition advantage. So I'll go back to my text just to make sure I'm being honest. Honest to what is being said by Harper and Pitsaladis. Look at the last paragraph. Any remaining advantage, we're talking about residual male advantage here, any remaining advantage held by a gender variant athlete is only one component of their unique makeup. So male advantage, residual male advantage, you just happen to have. It's just one of these competition advantages that athletes happen to have. So I think what the IOC have done is this, and of course, well, I think that's a contradiction. Now in philosophy, one grades arguments, well, I grade arguments in the following way. Interestingly true, boringly true, interestingly false, boringly false, not even false, right? An argument that contains a contradiction like this is not even false, right? So some reasons like this is a mistake. Residual male advantage is a male advantage. It should be treated as sex advantage, that is, as a categorical advantage. The question we need to ask ourselves is about kinds of advantage, whether they are categorical or competitive, not about their size. All this stuff, if you've read the framework document on fairness, inclusion, and non-discrimination, all this stuff about disproportionate and proportionate advantage is stuff about size of advantage, and it's not the size of the advantage that matters. The IOC account of proportionality is irrelevant to fairness. Now, the IOC document is supposed to act as guidance to international federations. I'm very pleased that the international federations have not followed the IOC document, which is one reason why the IOC should withdraw it. And it's almost impossible to follow that guidance because, like I say, it didn't make sense. So proportionality is irrelevant. Categorical advantages should be excluded regardless of their size. Competition advantages should be included regardless of their size. Does an e-bike give a disproportionate... So here are some dumb questions. Does an e-bike give a disproportionate or proportionate advantage in the Tour de France? A lot of philosophy is about asking the right question. That's a dumb question. Does it matter whether it's a 50-watt or a 100-watt e-bike? What about microdosing? Microdosing with performance-enhancing drugs. One consequence of this is that the research program at Brighton and Loughborough universities, led by Yanis Pitsaladis, which seems to be in a bit of trouble, isn't even asking the right question. I am not against doing more research and more science. I don't want to give my fellow academics a hard time by saying you shouldn't get grants for any more research funding. But you need to ask the right question, and you're not even doing that. Summary, which you can't read because it's too high. Male advantage matters. This is the standard view. Male advantage matters. Here's a possibility, we could decide that male advantage doesn't matter. We have moved beyond sex to, the glorious new understanding in which our sexes are as important as our eye color. So we have unisex competition. This is it's a terrible view, but it's a coherent view. It's the view that male advantage doesn't matter. This would be unfair. I am against the abolition of women's sport. The IOC paper, the Harper proposal of meaningful competition, means considering an advantage as both a category advantage and a competitive advantage. This means that male advantage matters, so we have women's sport, and at the same time, male advantage doesn't matter. That's a contradiction. This is incoherent. Right, I'm going to click through the next bit, which is, well, I'll just say, if you ask the wrong question, you'll get the wrong answer. If you ask where should trans women compete, are they closest to the male category or the female category in terms of certain metrics, you will get the wrong answer to this question. What you need to ask yourself is what fairness in sport consists in. Trans women are not some amorphous group of people who are strangely sexless, floating above the two biological categories of male and female. If you ask yourself what is fair in sport with respect to sex, and you will come up with the answer, category for people without male advantage, then it's clear that trans women should be in an open category which allows male advantage, and not a female category which excludes male advantage. So, to wind up, 3 takeaways. There is no concept of meaningful competition such that it is fair for trans women to compete in female sport. There is no clever philosophical argument that you've all missed that makes it fair for trans women to compete in women's sport. Believe me, well, I suppose, I mean, trust me, I have read everything that Rachel McKinnon has said about this. Someone has to. I've read everything that Joanna Harper has said about this. There is no clever argument that you've missed. There is no kind of subtle, sophisticated understanding of fairness by which it's, fair for male-bodied people to compete in female sport. There isn't one there. It doesn't work. You haven't missed anything. Your view is substantiated. And what's the last one? So organisations, this is a message to international federations, national governing bodies, organisations that allow trans women to compete in female sport fail in an obligation that I believe that they have, which is to allow, facilitate, organise fair competition for women. I don't think that the organisations are entitled to do that. I don't think it should be allowed that these organisations fail in that obligation, because that is what they're doing. They are failing to provide a service, provide fair competition for women. I don't think that's a choice that it's legitimate to make. So I'll end there. Thank you.